Campers, it's me, Ari Lehman, the first Jason Voorhees. From Friday the 13th, I'm here with AJ, and he's got the juiciest slice ready for you. It's dripping with blood. Jason never dies.
Salutations all. This time around, I'm talking about an audacious grindhouse classic that involves mayhem and power tools.
It's like we've been here before.
I covered this film in my first video. Although that inaugural effort was a fine enough toe dip, it was more a beta test than something I would continue to stand behind. Produced before I had developed certain elements of what I'll charitably refer to as my style. Thus, I feel it would benefit significantly from a redo.
Are you kidding?
So, what happens when you mix home invasion with some slasher elements, a good squirt of family drama, and some serious religious overtones? In the early 90s, we got the ultimate variation in Seven. But if you look back a little further, to the end of the disco decade, to the year Michael Myers was unleashed on the world to much greater acclaim, you get a film that reflects a world in chaos. The 1978 drive-in movie of the year and notorious video Nasty, the undiluted and warped romp through a field of black tulips, the grim and grisly gore fest, the Toolbox Murders.
You big goof.
Thank you for checking this out. I deeply appreciate it. If anything about this trips your fancy, please like, subscribe, and share.
Yes.
Directed by Dennis Donnelly, who mostly worked in TV. From a script commissioned by producer Tony Didio. Can't let the re-release of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre suck up all those sweet exploitation dollars. The cinematography was in the hands of one Gary Graver, who had a long career before sadly dying from cancer in 2006. Even directed the 1982 cult classic Trick or Treats. And I pontificate about because I think with a name like Graver, it's tragic he never worked on a Phantasm film. But I digress. The film stars animal rights activist Pamela Ferdin.
Le specialty of the house. Chicken a la TV dinners.
As our survivor girl, the insouciant Lori Ballard. Former child star Nicholas Bovey.
What, again?
As Lori's brother and would-be hero, Joey Ballard. Helen Crump from The Andy Griffith Show herself, a one-off appearance that turned into 66. Annetta Corsat.
I never could stay at home. Kids were always so good, I figured, well, must be doing something right.
As beleaguered single mom Joanne Ballard. The well-cast Tim Donnelly.
Maybe she saw the murder, got scared, ran away, I don't know. I'm just saying that you need more than a spilled Pepsi to prove that she was kidnapped.
As Gumshoe on the Case, Lieutenant Mark Jameson. Prominent blue film actress. Okay, she went on to do porn. Kelly Nichols. As the recipient of perhaps this film's most notable death scene, Ms. Deanne DeVore. The late character actor Cameron Mitchell.
You gotta forgive me, I can't stand the sight of blood.
As the owner of the building where the bloodbath goes down, Vance Kingsley, and he took the role to dirty up his squeaky clean image, Land of the Lost television star Wesley Ure.
Something terrible happens and it really stops everything for you.
As Vance's handsome but nefarious nephew, Ken Kingsley. Set in Los Angeles at the pinnacle of the Southern California serial killer craze, from the opening shot this film oozes the inky darkness that leaches out of the seedy underbelly of the world. Reflecting the sullied headspace of the man cutting a course through the night, a shadowy figure cruising toward a rendezvous with destiny.
Oh, Lord.
On the radio, an evangelical sermon reminds sinners, which I take to mean everyone not regularly engaging in self-flagellation and heavy tithing. The spot where the accident occurred reveals the driver is hauling around a lot of tattered baggage full of items he'd rather not examine.
I know he's really feeling guilty. There's a lot of pressure under that kind of stress, and he might become irrational.
Some flowers pay the price. The Mercedes arrives at an apartment complex. Our aspiring deviant lets himself into the building. Apparently this guy has some authority and goes right into a dwelling. The lady of the domicile confuses him for someone who gives a damn.
What the hell's going on? Call you Monday, and you show up Thursday.
This while he makes preparations. Much to her displeasure, his response to her rant proves far less satisfaction conscious than she bargained for.
What the hell are you doing?
After introducing her to the finer points of the drill, he dons a ski mask.
Yes, I'll be there in the morning.
Poorly. And the hunt is on.
He must be a real right maniac, this fella.
A young woman arrives to an empty apartment, comes dangerously close to showering, but settles on changing as a pretext to show off her blessings. Since this is that kind of movie, visible breasts some sort of prerequisite harbinger to kick off the next stage of the bloodbath. Well, that was a fine how do you do. Really bringing the nightmare right to her door. He carries her off like some kind of beast. For some unceremonious hammer play. A flick where the blood flies picturesquely, this kill is simply brutal. Another woman proves to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Deborah! Did you leave that mess in the hallway?
The blood just keeps flying.
No survey.
What could they possibly have done to deserve such barbaric and inhuman treatment?
This is a bit of a happening place with a lot of fine-looking young women in residence.
Hubba.
So it seems the abundance of the provocative has drawn the invader. Following the carnage, the maniac sneaks out to cool down. Before the blood has even coagulated, his handiwork is discovered.
Oh my! Oh my!
The man is an animal.
A big police presence is soon on scene.
Anything strange ever happen in here?
Strange?
Other than a massacre and the presumption of
Pill pop and sex freaks.
nah. Vance owns the place and pleads weighted ignorance.
This is a security building, and I find it very difficult to grasp.
Next morning we meet high schooler Lori. On the right track, even at her tender age, she's wise to life.
No, okay? I'd either end up divorced or with a bunch of kids and a crappy job.
She lives in the murder tenement with her mom.
Did you eat?
I'm not hungry, Mom.
Oh, honey, you can't go without something to eat.
Mom, I gotta run.
And smart aleck brother Joey, also high school age.
Think fast!
Thanks.
A great way to kick off the day. On the way to school, she learns about the slayings of the night before.
Hey, Lauren, did you hear what happened last night? It was in the apartment right above us. My dad almost saw the guy. I mean, he heard the car start.
After nightfall, the killer resumes the bloody mayhem. Targeting the nubile and spry Miss DeVore, engaging in some harmless self-care. He proves he always comes prepared with the right tool for the job. Accosting her in the bath with a nail gun, she flees for her life, him in hot pursuit, firing away. Evade as she might, he proves adept enough at wielding a nail gun to make a bloody pincushion of her.
The man is an animal.
the invader makes sure to finish the job.
But it's right.
The killer's issues grow more pronounced.
Dreams come true.
Evidently committing the sin of pleasuring herself in the privacy of her own apartment in the confines of her bathtub warrants this extreme reprisal.
The key is, he's an animal.
That much is clear, sir.
As poor Miss DeVore was being dispatched, Lori was upstairs engaging in some chit-chat with her boyfriend.
Well, I better go study because I'm getting pretty embarrassed by this conversation.
She's truly a good girl. As she wraps up the call, a visitor steals in.
Oh, okay. Okay, goodbye.
And snatches her. Joey arrives home.
Lori?
But thinks little of possible signs of a struggle until Blabbing reveals his hand.
Damn it, Lori, did you know you left the door?
And where have you been if you don't know where your sister is?
Joanne is so over his antics and maybe the world in general. With the discovery that Ms. DeVore was nailed and not in the good way, some correlate Lori's disappearance and the murder, and Lieutenant Jameson grills Joey for thinking the two events have anything to do with each other, putting the young man in a beaming mood.
Hey, what are you getting on my case for? Maybe I wasn't paying too much attention to the news. You really want my help, or am I some kind of suspect?
He's totally cool with insinuations about his sister, too.
Is she in the habit of going out at night, too? Maybe staying out all night?
Lieutenant, she's 15 years old.
So what?
She's not that kind of girl.
Proving he's really got that cop intuition that makes law enforcement infallible, Lieutenant Jameson notices no smoke as the world burns.
We got 4 violent, bloody murders and a possible kidnapping. I'm supposed to think this guy butchered these girls and kidnapped your sister?
Okay.
I mean, it's possible, but it doesn't make sense.
Joey accepts his determination with good grace.
Lieutenant, if you won't find her, I will.
And he responds not at all condescendingly.
You know, Joe, I bet you will.
Joey leaves on good terms.
To hell with what the cops think.
Taking it upon himself to look for clues, he encounters Kent.
How's it going? Revisiting the scene, huh? That's not funny, Miller.
Because they exist outside his sphere, Kent can treat the murders detachedly.
Doesn't look like he stabbed or anything right here. More like the blood wiped off from his shoes, not like it gushed out of her. Don't you think?
And as a result, rather callously.
This isn't gonna get to you? No, man, it's just a job.
Joey's surprised a guy like him is cleaning crime scenes.
I didn't know you had to work. If I want to get around, Dad gave me the car, but I gotta get my own gas.
It might have something to do with macabre curiosity, too.
Well, this is where she died. Come here. Look at all that blood.
Kent has an idea.
You want her a few extra bucks? Uncle Vance isn't gonna mind me as long as this gets cleaned up before everybody moves out.
They discuss his cousin Kathy.
She was a sophomore, right? Kind of small and pretty. Yeah, really, really pretty.
Joey sees an opportunity.
Hey, Kent. You want to help me with something?
Distracted by grief, it takes a bit of joggling that cursor to bring him out of hibernation.
Kent? Oh, yeah, sure, what do you want?
Joey's evidently watched some TV police dramas.
We'll need some solvent and glue. If we're really going to find out what's happened to Lori, we're going to have to break the police seal on the door and then replace it.
With Kent on board, he makes the mistake of revealing.
But Lori used to be kind of interested in you. She even asked me one time if I could fix her up with you. But I told her you were out of her league. You're kidding me. She's a fox.
Kent is all reassurances now.
Hey, don't worry, Joey. Lori will be okay.
They check out the other murder apartment.
It's a lot worse than the last one. Oh, God, that's her. She sure was pretty.
And find nothing of interest.
Hey, Kent.
With Kent, it's definitely a curiosity.
Nail gun. What? He got her with a nail gun.
He's smart enough to notice and interpret clues, too.
You know, it's one of those things you use.
pay a visit to Vance's home garage to pick up some supplies, and he proves a bit taciturn.
Anyway, this is my friend Joey. Joe Valley. He's gonna help me clean out of this, okay, isn't he? Uncle Ed, you okay?
And odd.
I was just fixing something to eat.
Hey, that sounds great.
But he throws them some cash, so...
Hey, he's alright.
We finally learn what became of Lori. She could have been turned into mincemeat with a saber saw. At least as a captive, she has a shot.
L-O-L-L-I-P-O-P spells lollipop.
Such a shock. Vance is the killer, on a quest to eliminate sinners.
If you get rid of the evil, then all that's left is good.
And oh no, Lori's been cast as a stand-in for a dead girl.
You got everything here. I mean, Kathy'd want you to have it.
To be part of a living display bolstering a madman's delusions.
Sandwich. Oh, here, let's look up a bit. Don't cry. Please don't cry. Drink some milk, just a swallow.
That's a problem. No matter how hospitable they are, you can't reason someone out of a position they didn't use reason to get into.
I tried to keep her right, to keep her good, but today, I think that's impossible.
So Lori is thoroughly trapped.
Did it hurt? Much? I mean, when God took you away from me.
And besides bathroom issues, being kept in this fashion for too long could lead to some problems.
Bed sores hurt!
So it's all a countdown until something's gotta give.
Who would have thought that would be worse news?
In dead of night, Ken sneaks up to Vance's house and peeps in. Unable to look up, Lori uses other means to identify the one tapping at the window. Even after seeing her bound to the bed, Kent does nothing, hinting either at complicity or something else. During a discussion with Lieutenant Jameson, Joey comes to a conclusion.
If he didn't con his way in, what if he didn't have to?
Oh, good thinking, kid. Now, what'd he do, find the key under the doormat?
Driven by his deduction, Joey wastes no time and makes a beeline to Vance's house. Foolish on so many fronts, he sneaks in, an action sort of akin to prowling around a lion's den, but finds what he's after. Only to be confronted.
Need some tools, Joey? He did it.
Blindsided by his pal's sudden duplicity.
Suppose you walk around saying silly things like that. Just suppose, for the hell of it, that dumbass Detective Jameson believes you. Very well thought of.
Isn't that just the way?
So you see, I gotta protect my family.
Cat and mouse games make me suspect Kent was maybe entertaining some dark ideas for a while. The leap to this kind of sadism isn't one people are typically able to make so easily, that being a Rubicon only crossed once. There at the precipice of barbarism, Kent leaps and right there in the garage incinerates Joey. About 40 feet away, Vance is entertaining Lori to the best of his ability.
Isn't she nice? I remember when I bought her for you.
At this point, he spiraled completely into his delusion. They can hear screams of agony, but Vance dismisses it as...
Those are children. They're playing. Oh, they scream a lot.
There's a strange wistfulness to his words and overfamiliarity in his actions.
That's why you're my little girl. My very own. You're my child, and you always will be.
Kent slithers in.
And Kent? Hello, Kent. It's your cousin Kent.
And Vance includes him in his ramblings.
I mean, Kent always helped, and he kept the boys from hurting you.
Revealing how even before losing her, he had strict ideas and tawdry assumptions about what could happen to Kathy if not protected.
And he kept those nasty boys from trying to touch you. He took you places that you wanted to go.
Vance assumed that for young people, life out in the world was what led to bacchanalia hedonism due to a morally corrosive society, only to learn the corruption might have been coming from much closer to home.
Never helped you protect Kathy.
Kent's claim he killed Joey to protect his family becomes quite preposterous when he confronts Vance.
Every time we could get away, we'd make love. We made love.
Whipping him into a state of frenzy. Poisoning the well only exacerbates an already bad situation.
I am going to kill you.
No, you're going to die. I'm going to kill you. You killed
Liar, you dirty, filthy fornicator!
Vance ends up getting the business end of a knife.
You killed my cat!
Kent emerges to free Lori.
Okay, calm down.
Her relief is short-lived when it becomes clear that his comforting is a prelude to something else.
What are you? Kent, no.
No, Lori, I can't understand Kathy.
In no position to fight, Lori is forced to indulge his desires.
It's one thing marriage like. We're married, Lori.
Afterward, Kent believes himself invulnerable to Lori.
Just the way Kathy and I were married.
To her horror, he casually alludes to killing Vance and Joey, and proclaims,
"We'll be together."
At the absolute nadir of her life, Lori observes the scissors. Cut to a bloody and traumatized Lori walking away into the night. An intertitle informing us she spent 3 years institutionalized before resuming a normal life. A truly sad state of affairs.
Why don't you shut the hell up, crybaby?
So, what's the Toolbox Murders getting at in its nitty-gritty break out all the power tools to commit a bloody massacre sort of way? Linda Gross of the Los Angeles Times denounced the film as degenerate, unmotivated, and pornographic trash. And to add insult to injury, called the direction flaccid and voyeuristic. The New York Times critic Fred Belden felt no better, writing that the film was clumsily expressed and incredibly silly. I find that an interesting statement. Times have changed. Maybe with the proliferation of true crime content, we've seen such a wide spectrum of crazy, bizarre, wacky, unprecedented, and outright outlandish killings. The events of a film such as the Toolbox Murders don't seem so outside the realm of possibility. The writers were sent to a showing of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and told to devise a flick that could draw fans of the macabre. I believe they accomplished that resoundingly, but I also think they crafted a film of surprising nuance and awareness of simmering societal issues. Lori, the epitome of the good girl living a clean life, exemplifies that in the real world the virtuous don't get spared, excluded, or any special treatment at all. Goodness is not necessarily rewarded. Rather than be persuaded to roll over to fun, very easy for a lot of youth, she applies logical concerns to put off her boyfriend.
No, I'd never get away with it.
She's a virgin who spends her nights studying, preparing to take care of herself, because society has warned her men will knock her up and exit, so it's better to keep to herself, chastity intact, only to learn getting shortchanged in life in the worst ways isn't exclusive to the willfully sinful. She could have been elsewhere succumbing to her boyfriend's wiles and avoided abduction altogether. Escape comes at a steep cost too, because the toll is her very innocence. And even if she committed every fiber of her being to praying for deliverance from her peril, it wasn't like some all-powerful deity was there to come to her rescue.
Damn!
Maybe inadvertently, by applying religious underpinnings, This film emerges as a piece of horror that had its finger on the pulse of a shifting society, more extreme and polarized by the day, as forces conspire to drive and expand wedges that resonate to this day. It reflects a deep distrust of a changing society in general, and mistrust of people specifically, people with, oh no, differing views. It's appropriate this rehash comes in the wake of the recent passing of evangelical leader Pat Robinson, since he was maybe the largest force in melding the right wing with evangelical religion, creating the lockstep conservative party we see today.
Blasphemer!
Conservatism has upsides, especially to those who identify as such, but when it comes to social issues, from women's rights to children's rights to civil rights to LGBTQ rights, the movement has invariably been on the wrong side of history. It seems liberalism ultimately wins out because it represents advancement in human rights over antiquated ideas.
You heathen!
The sort of archaic ideas that have now, in the wake of the striking down of Roe v. Wade, literally led to a 14-year-old girl giving birth to her defiler's baby. I'm not saying all pro-life, anti-abortion types are religious fanatics. Protecting life is usually admirable. But when it's illegal to remove a dead fetus to preserve the mother's life, or grant an abortion to save a girl from giving birth to the living embodiment of her abuse, the abuser will also have legal rights over. What standpoint does that come from other than religious fanaticism?
Sorry to bother you.
Forget we were ever here.
The timing of the evangelical takeover couldn't have been better. For the first time in American history, disillusionment of government was being manifested into outright distrust of the very institution, making it easier to divvy up sides, as there could no longer be conservative Democrats or liberal Republicans. Once it was easier for wedge issues to be employed to split people on social issues, while fanning the flames of hate developing between adherents to the parties, tricking the weak-minded into the sort of stubborn affiliation that leads to politicians on both sides staying in power way past the expiration of their usefulness. All this demonstrates how, with this social breakdown, the old proverb divide and conquer applies, because when people and political parties are split over social arguments, under the cover of distraction, the right and the left prove they are wings of the same bird when they vote in tandem, if it has to do with benefiting their donors or raising their own wages, while publicly fighting unendingly over abortion, Social Security, child labor laws, and whatever other hot-button issue they can invoke. What I find fascinating and particularly tragic, no matter which party is in charge, the situation doesn't change for the troops that both sides claim to love. If anything should be bipartisan, it should be looking out for those who serve.
Right, you're talking in circles, but...
Anyway, the point is, behind the scenes, the religious right was consolidating power and sowing seeds of hate in their followers against anyone who dared not fall at their feet. Since I believe this was all done with the best of intentions, in some misbegotten bid to save the country from the sinfulness into which some felt it was sinking, I don't think hatred was the goal, even if a lot of it was the result.
Yep, that stands up to scrutiny.
That said, I don't think the intent was for some of those seeds of hatred to grow into mass-murdering religious cults such as that of Jeffrey Lundgren, white nationalist mass shooters like Robert Gregory Bowers, and mission-oriented serial killers like Joseph Paul Franklin. But that's what happened. All this leads me to good old Vance, a holier-than-thou zealot who feels permitted by higher powers to scour the earth of those he considers corrupting forces.
Bible says, if one of thy members offend thee, cut it off.
The whole film rests on his Old Testament views. Frankly, he bears a puritanical streak so wide it makes the Elizabethan era seem reasonable by comparison. To him, very normal youthful activity is
unnatural, filthy, dirty, so dirty. Unnatural.
You know what's not natural? Rejecting the notion homosexuality, masturbation, and crazy sex exist in the natural world, from insects to reptiles to mammals. The outliers are humans bound by imposed morality. I could explain how the Bible deems eating shellfish an abomination on par with homosexuality, but that really makes no difference. Picking and choosing what's relevant in the Bible is in the hands of anyone who wants to deem themselves an authority or worse, a prophet. Anyone who operates under the belief,
everything I do is guided by this holy book. So if anybody says that I've done something wrong, well, then they're saying the Bible is wrong.
Isn't to be trusted. On the one hand, Vance is truly a pitiable character, and his love for his daughter is sadly apparent.
You remember when you were a child? My little child.
In light of his anguish, is it any wonder that losing her made him snap?
I was the only one who understood you. The only one. And you always understood me too.
Grief can be mind-bending. It's too bad it warped him into an unrelenting monster.
I think maybe God wants it that way.
But does that in some way let him off the hook? I suppose it depends on how predisposed he was to such retribution before the loss. A full-on psychotic break would bring the possibility of legal insanity into it. But for all his apparent craziness, what reason shows through, what rationality, proves he's still cognizant of what he's doing and doesn't care that it's illegal.
I did it very quickly. As quickly as I could because I never want to cause suffering. You know, I shouldn't have told you about that.
I suspect some of those hatred seeds were rooted in his mind for a long time.
It's also ugly. An ugly world.
Planted by ideas of repression and the notion of godly, religiously condoned reprisal, because the leap to committing a massacre seemed too short for a guy not already in some way primed.
But God knows.
I was chosen.
Perhaps Vance only recently started listening to fire and brimstone radio ministers, but I doubt it. I suspect Kathy's death pushed him further into pre-existing interests and down a rabbit hole of the darker side of piety. Vance is so over the edge into religious mania.
But I watched her, and she did terrible things to her own body.
He's too quick in his fervor to dehumanize those living in ways he doesn't agree with, and can't reconcile with his black and white, unnuanced worldview.
Such a bad world. It's evil. Full of evil. Terrible people.
Oh, the hypocrisy. Brimming with righteous rage. In Vance's mind, he's a warrior of God, curtailing sin with the vilest methods a box of tools can provide.
I'm humane. I'm compassionate.
Vance applies the burn a village to save a village mentality of the Vietnam War.
She's undermining world peace, and she must die.
From his perspective, how is what he's up to at all bad? He's saving souls from eternal damnation at the cost of bodies. But the souls are what's important, right?
It's because they were never taught what was right when they were little. Nobody to teach them, and they grew up. It was too late.
Riveting stuff, but I don't think I'm out of line saying not what Jesus would do. What was Vance's end game? What might have happened had he triumphed over Kent? A captive can't be held indefinitely without a considerable investment in keeping them alive. Check out John Fall's The Collector.
But we mess it up, don't we?
Maintaining Laurie would come down to his resourcefulness, but with a psyche as fractured as his, as well as the disorganized nature of his kills and general lack of carefulness, it seems unlikely he could have held it together for long. I think after Joey went missing, Jameson might have put two and two together and thought to check deeper into Vance. The most likely scenario would have been a siege and standoff that ended with Vance dead.
I'll be climbing Jacob's ladder. I'll be climbing.
The revelation of Vance's true motives could have been a problem, but with it I think the film makes a point about the wide spectrum of people who might be potential murderers. Even though that's a scary point in and of itself, I still wonder if too much credence was lent to the notion our right maniac was a delusional sad sack, seemingly devoid of the underlying perverted paraphilias that frequently drive murderers of women.
Looks like the possibility of an assault as well as a homicide, so anything at all would be helpful. Do you have any impression about her sex life.
Since his violent derangement was triggered by intense bereavement and emotional distress, because once the killer is revealed as a pathetic broken man,
Kathy. Oh, my baby.
the film falls into the original When a Stranger Calls trap of introducing a pitiable human monster, which mitigates some of the fear factor even though he remains a potent threat. When all is said and done, Vance is a detestable killer marching to the beat of his own drummer, too overwhelmed by grief, regret, and unresolved feelings to see out of his bubble of madness. He kills because he feels justified.
They were all committing unnatural acts.
A normal state of affairs. It was a time when it was easy to blame problems on the ills of society, or those someone judges and assigns as the ills of society. Vance decided his own tenets were the evils poisoning the world, and thus acted as judge, jury, and executioner, only for his psychopathy to boomerang with Kent's betrayal. Was this family slaying a message about mental illness running in families? I wouldn't go that far. It seems the film had lost too much tension by removing Vance as an immediate danger to Laurie. To regain footing, the film skillfully employed the trick up its sleeve of Kent perhaps being an even worse psycho than Vance, making him the sex maniac this kind of film demands.
That's disgusting.
Fulfilling prerequisites and restoring faith, this was truly a depraved film, sacrificed when Vance turned out to just be some heartbroken schmuck. When he's with Laurie, he's uncomfortably upbeat, cheerful in the face of his horrific crimes, believing he can solve all her sadness with a lollipop.
Want to eat your lollipop?
But all that is just a lost soul trying to whitewash the darkness, in which he has completely submerged.
Did that hurt when you died?
Kent's justifications are even more self-serving, his motives seeming to revolve around what most benefits him. Interestingly, Wesley Ure, after playing the goody two-shoes son for years on Land of the Lost, was elated to play the killer of the killer. His casting advertently or inadvertently makes a statement of how little trust can be placed in good looks. A handsome, charming young man.
And Kent, I want to thank you for that.
Kent typifies the sad fact Ted Bundy rubbed in the face of the nation when first arrested in 1975 for a series of murders of young women in the Pacific Northwest. Namely, even handsome, eloquent, suave, seemingly successful men can be chameleonic monsters hiding the darkest of dark sides. The sort of evil lust Vance was trying to stamp out is maybe what drove Kent, perhaps commentary about how we don't necessarily need to look beyond our own lives to find and root out evil.
Unnatural things.
Justifying the torturous murder of Joey as a necessary evil to protect his family from exposure, when presented with an opportunity to make Laurie his own, he quickly betrays the very family he was protecting. Is his claim of incest for sake of provocation, or actually true? Does it matter? In regard to his character, whether the feelings were reciprocated or not, he clearly was attracted to his cousin, so it's insight into his openness to depravity. There is no question of his awareness, even enjoyment, during his killing.
Terrible. I wasn't expecting anything like this.
I would say that since he's not only a killer but a defiler, Kent emerges as the greater evil. His good looks offered a facade behind which he could orchestrate his evil machinations and clown others like Joey. But is it possible his good looks also gave him misperceptions concerning the strength of his magnetism, in the end leaving him exposed? After all, he foolishly believed Laurie's attraction would indemnify him from her judgment. In that, Kent exemplifies overconfidence. He maybe should have found a way to blame Vance for Joey's cruel burning. But no, he felt Laurie would accept his psychopathy. Since she's not a psycho, Laurie of course viewed him as a monster and dealt with him accordingly.
You know, like on the farm when you take care of an old dog or an old horse. No suffering.
I would say Lieutenant Jameson makes for a great example of useless authority and serves as a commentary on law enforcement bias. Why can a teenage boy ferret out that the flourishing businessman is the guilty party when the seasoned investigator can't? Likely the detective is unable to see the forest through the trees because Vance, as a successful middle-aged, upper-middle-class white business owner in no way fits the picture of a bloodthirsty maniac. Ultimately, Lieutenant Jameson's skepticism got Joey killed. Had he fostered a better rapport, he could have gotten his man, saved a life, and rescued Lori all in one fell swoop. He maybe would have gotten a commendation. Everything about the crime screams anomaly, but he wants to believe it a straightforward matter. Tunnel vision much?
Listen, I've had just about enough of your comedy, clown.
This is a film that poses a surprising number of relevant points. Maybe the most germane that because important elements of a formerly idealized but now openly broken down society have fallen through the cracks, such as the strength of the nuclear family, the youth, and any notion of a bright future for the country, hope has become a dwindling commodity.
My God, what's happened here? It just shouldn't have happened to any of them.
Put bluntly, there was no longer time for the family unit to flourish as children were put on the back burner, because parents needed to work long hours to make the rent, especially single parents such as Joanne Ballard, a woman who is overworked and overstressed trying to give her children a decent life. Are failures on her part to blame for Joey doing who knows what while she works and his sister studies? Since he has no problem showing her respect.
Just get me something cold to drink.
I would say he's going through typical teenage angst and defiance.
Well, that's what I told her.
Is he directionless? To a degree it seems, but a lot of teens appear aimless until they find their way. Joey's response to Lori's abduction proved for all his youthful snark, he had a good heart. He might not have been the studious student pulling down A's and planning his future, but where it counted, he was blessed with true goodness, which makes it so his death reinforces the sad and pervasive lesson the film imparts. There is no guaranteed rewards for doing the right thing.
The best are always taken when they're young, because the world would ruin them.
By the by, the first time I saw this film, because it came out of the blue, Joey's death
shook my soul.
And I think even now it's left some demons I will need to at some point exercise in an episode of Extraordinary Exits.
I'm excited.
Through Vance's perspective, is this film making a point about partying, masturbation, and promiscuity being bad or immoral behaviors that invite doom?
That woman that lived downstairs from you. I stood and I watched her.
I would say more how those who believe such nonsense respond to the world at large. What do I personally believe to be wrong beyond the obvious? I would say action or inaction that leads to harming others, especially the truly undeserving and innocent. The film might be saying those who are so painfully puritanical that they are dangerously delusional will always view normal people with ordinary desires as sinful and irredeemable, because they don't fall in line with some narrow definition of right and wrong based on an interpretation of Scripture. Case in point.
We see a deadly sin on every street corner, in every home, and we tolerate it. We tolerate it because it's common. It's trivial.
Most of what he's referring to as sin maybe qualifies as poor behavior, but as for warranting a death sentence or an eternity in hell, that's a stretch only a truly malefic mind could make.
I don't have time for these shenanigans.
The Toolbox Murders might also have something to say about how many have a need to assign blame, either to reconcile what they don't want to face, or to clear their conscience. Ken would say Joey's meddling got him killed. It was his own fault. Vance would say
they had it coming.
Would say he was giving the sinful their just deserts as retribution for their wickedness. He was doing God's work as a means of penance for his failures. Kathy died because a soured society failed to offer the safeguards that would have protected her from growing up and saved her life. Liberals are at fault for encouraging new freedoms. Conservatives are at fault for not forcing greater suppression sooner. Maybe all this is making too much of a sleazy, grimy horror flick full of gruesome, bloody murders.
I think you're a deeply disturbed man.
Thank you.
Well, I've about reached the end of the rope, so I won't leave you dangling. Thank you for humoring my ramblings. Please share any refutations, opinions, accusations, japes, or other ideas in the comments below. Please join me for whatever I'm up to next time. And just remember, Bit by bit by bit, he carved a nightmare. Bye now.
Bye, creepy man. Keep it creepy.